Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Unnamed Horror. I'm Hunter TheHande Makinen, and I'm joined by Retro Kaiser.
Yep, it's your annoying white guy here again.
Two annoying white guys. And this is our HB...
Yes, that's gonna be the name of the next rap album, by the way.
Two annoying white guys.
Yeah.
And this is our H.P. Lovecraft podcast where I read an H.P. Lovecraft story and Retro Kaiser makes sound effects and jokes and stuff.
And observations. Let's not forget about the observations.
And the observations, yes.
Yes.
And as you have probably read the title, you probably already know which story we are doing today. It's a story that's been a long time going. Not a long time going because we're starting it today. It's a long time coming. That's the right. Yeah, just like me, but I'm Tish. Okay, but yeah. So today we are doing Herbert West, Reanimator. I almost said The Reanimator, but it's actually not the name of the short story, but it is the name of the... Is that the name of the movie, then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it actually says here in the... I'm reading this, as always, from H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction by... Who's the publisher of this? I forget. But it has these little text blurbs at the start to tell some backstory about the writing of this story. Okay, so we will probably not finish The Reanimator in this podcast, but I dare not say yet which chapters we will do in this podcast, but we will place the information either in the description or at the start or in the title or wherever we can fit it. And I suppose you're excited about this one because you've seen the movie version. I have not.
I've seen the movie version. I haven't read the book version, but I've heard an audio play on the book version.
Okay. Yeah, I know I know a little bit of, I've seen clips of The Reanimator, that's about it, and, but the main thing I know about it is that the guy who played Herbert in the movie version is also the guy who voiced the Question in Justice League Unlimited, and that's about it. I love his voice.
He was also Scarecrow at one point as well in Batman Animated.
Okay, I didn't know that, about that.
Jeffrey Combs. Good actor, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I really loved his performance as the Question, so that's the only thing I really know about the movie version. But today, this is a zombie story, I guess, a little bit. Which, it's been a while. We've done all kinds of horror stories. We have the Poe-cast where we read Edgar Allan Poe's stories, but I don't think we've ever had just straight up dead people coming back to life. We've had dead animals come back to life in one of my stories, but that's different.
Yep.
Okay, but hey, let's get on with the story of Herbert West, Reanimator, and we will start with the first chapter, From the Dark. Of Herbert West, who was my friend in college and in afterlife, after space life, I can speak only with extreme terror. The terror is not due altogether to the sinister manner of his recent disappearance, but was engendered by the whole nature of his life work, and first gained its acute form more than 17 years ago, when we were in the third year of our course at the Miskatonic University Medical School in Arkham. While he was with me, the wonder and diabolism of his experiments fascinated me utterly, and I was his closest companion. Now that he is gone, and the spell is broken, the actual fear is greater. Memories and possibilities are ever more hideous than realities. The first horrible incident of our acquaintance was the greatest shock I ever experienced, and it is not only with reluctance that I repeat it. As I have said, it happened when we were in the medical school, where West had already made himself notorious through his wild theories of the nature of death and the possibility of overcoming it artificially. So, yeah, one of my stories kind of has a little bit of similar vibe to this. But it's been my understanding that this was originally kind of meant as a weirdly kind of like as a parody of Frankenstein. But we can talk about that at the end of the podcast. Okay. His views, which were widely ridiculed by the faculty and his fellow students, hinged on the essentially mechanistic nature of life and concerned means for operating the organic machinery of mankind by calculated chemical action after the failure of natural processes. In his experiments with various animating solutions, he had killed and treated immense numbers of rabbits, guinea pigs, cats, dogs, and monkeys.
Ah!
I was still hoping for the dog.
I thought you was expecting what's up, Doc? Not me, I'm dead.
Okay. Till he had become the prime nuisance of the college. Several times he had actually obtained signs of life in animals supposedly dead, in many cases violent signs. But he soon saw that the perfection of this process, if indeed possible, would necessarily involve a lifetime of research. It likewise became clear that since the same solution never worked alike on different organic species, he would require human subjects for further and more specialized progress. It was here that he first came into conflict with the college authorities and was debarred from future experiments by no less a dignitary than the dean of the medical school himself.
West, you're expelled.
The learned and benevolent Dr. Alan Halsey, whose work in behalf of the stricken is recalled by every old resident of Arkham. On behalf of the stricken. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I had a brain fart moment there. Yeah, because it's a medical school. Okay. I had always been exceptionally tolerant of West's pursuits, and we frequently discussed his theories, whose ramifications and corollaries were almost infinite. That's a funny word. That's why I had to stop on it. Corollary, but like probably from correlation. Yeah. Holding with Haeckel that all life is a chemical and physical process, and that the so-called soul is a myth. My friend believed that artificial reanimation of the dead can depend only on the condition of the tissues, and that
That's
unless
true.
actual decomposition has set in, corpse fully equipped with organs may, with suitable measures, be set going again in the peculiar fashion known as life. That the psychic or intellectual life might be impaired by the slight deterioration of sensitive brain cells, which even a short period of death would be apt to cause, West fully realized. It had at first been his hope to find a regent which would restore vitality. No, wait, I read that incorrectly. I think reagent, I think is a. I recognize that word, and I think I said it incorrectly. A reagent which would restore vitality before the actual advent of death, and only repeated. And only repeated failures on animals had shewn him that the natural and artificial life motions
Woof,
were
go away. Woof.
incompatible. Yeah, that's another one of those Lovecraft specialties using the old versions of. I think it's been show every single time. So yeah, he then sought extreme freshness in his specimens.
Mentos.
Okay, injecting his solutions into the blood immediately after the extinction of life. It was his circumstance which made the professors so carelessly skeptical, for they felt that the true death had not occurred in any case. They did not stop to view the matter closely and reasoningly. It was not long after the faculty had interdicted or interdicted his work. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. That West confided to me his resolution to get fresh human bodies in some manner and continue in secret the experiment he could no longer perform openly. To hear him discussing ways and means was rather ghastly, for at the college we had never procured anatomical specimens ourselves. Whenever the morgue proved inadequate, two local Negroes attended
I
to
beg
this
your pardon.
attended to this matter, and they were seldom questioned. West was then a small, slender, spectacled youth with delicate features, yellow hair, pale blue eyes, and a soft voice, and it was uncanny to hear him dwelling on the relative merits of Christchurch Cemetery and the Potter's Field. Finally decided on the Potter's Field because practically everybody in Christchurch was embalmed, a thing of course ruinous to a thing of course ruinous to West's researches. So I think ruinous meaning. So this was a complication.
Means it's pointless to use
Yeah. Okay.
because they're being embalmed. Which
Yeah.
means-
That's what I meant. But it's just a really funny way of saying it. Like sometimes Lovecraft uses kind of odd phrasing and language, but yeah, sometimes it's so out of left field that it even takes me by surprise. Okay. I was by this time his active and enthralled assistant.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
That just sounds. Bleh.
And
Continue
helped
on.
him make all his decisions, not only concerning
No, you're doing that, not that. You're doing that, not that.
not only concerning the source of bodies, but concerning a suitable place for our loathsome work. It was I who thought of the deserted Chapman farmhouse beyond Meadow Hill, where we fitted up on the ground floor an operating room and a laboratory, each with dark
Lush.
curtains to conceal our midnight doings. Midnight doings.
Innuendo.
Yeah, that sounds a bit questionable. Yeah. The place was far from any road, and in sight of no other house, yet precautions were none the less necessary since rumors of strange lights started by chance nocturnal roamers would soon bring disaster to our enterprise. It was agreed to call the whole thing a chemical laboratory if discovery should occur. Because that's not suspicious at all. What are you guys doing in this? What are you guys doing in this farmhouse? Meth.
Science.
Yeah. Yes. Meth. Just straight meth.
Yep.
Gradually, we equipped our sinister haunt of science with
Ooh.
material either purchased in Boston or quietly borrowed from the college. Materials carefully made unrecognizable save to expert eyes. And
What the hell is that? Oh, that's what it is.
and provided spades and picks for the many burials we should have to make in the cellar. At the college, we used an incinerator, but the apparatus was too costly for our unauthorized laboratory. Bodies were always a nuisance, even the small guinea pig bodies. From the slight
Those damn nuisance bodies like to get on my furniture and everything.
From the slight clandestine experiments in West's room at the boarding house, we followed the local death notices like ghouls.
Dun 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 dun.
For our specimens demanded particular qualities. What we wanted were corpses interred soon after death and without artificial preservation, preferably free from malforming disease, and certainly with all organs present.
Yeah, good luck on that.
Accident victims were our best hope. Not for many weeks did we hear of anything suitable, though we talked with morgue and hospital authorities, ostensibly in the college's interest as often as we could without excitement.
So, do you have any spare dead bodies we can have? Preferably ones that have died in, accidents.
As often as we could without exciting suspicion. We found that the college had first choice in every case, so that it might be necessary to remain in Arkham during the summer, when only the limited summer school classes were held. In the end, though, luck favored us. For our day, we heard of an almost ideal case in the Potter's Field. A brawny young workman drowned only the morning before the Sumner's Pond. In Sumner's Pond, sorry. and buried at the town's expense without delay or embalming. That afternoon, we found the new grave and determined to begin work soon after midnight.
Jackpot!
I was hoping for a wolf howl or something. Okay, but yeah. It was a repulsive task that we undertook in the black small hours. Even though we lacked that at that time the special horror of graveyards, which later experiences brought to us, we carried spades and oiled dark lanterns. For although electric torches were then manufactured, they were not as satisfactory as the tungsten contrivances of today. The process of unearthing was slow and sordid. It might have been gruesomely poetical if we had been artists instead of scientists, and we were glad when our spades struck wood.
Plunk.
I'm actually, funny, I didn't even really think about this, but the previous horror podcast we also did, there was grave robbing going on.
Yeah, I was about to say, watch out for weird amulets.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the Hound last time when we were doing this. Okay. When the pine box was fully uncovered, West scrambled down and removed the lid, dragging out and propping up the contents.
Boing.
I reached
He has
down
them on springs, okay?
I reached down and hauled the contents out of the grave, and then both toiled hard to restore the spot to its former appearance.
Damn stains.
The affair made us rather nervous, especially the stiff form and
I hope my wife doesn't find out.
especially the stiff form and vacant face of our first trophy. But we managed to remove all traces of our visit. When we had patted down the last shovelful of earth, and we put the specimen in a canvas sack and set out for the old Chapman place beyond Meadow Hill.
Bum, 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 bum.
On an improvised dissecting table in the old farmhouse, by the light of a powerful acetine lamp and the presence of a horse. The specimen was not very spectral looking. It had been a sturdy and apparently unimaginative youth of wholesome plebeian type, large-framed, gray-eyed, and brown-haired. A sound animal without psychological subtleties. The horse, too. And probably having vital processes of the simplest and healthiest sort. What, no boing sound? No, never mind. Those, yeah. Okay, now, with the eyes closed, it looked more asleep than dead, though the expert test of my friend soon left no doubt on that score. We had at last what West had always longed for, a real dead man of the ideal kind, ready...
Oh.
Ready for the solution, as prepared according to the most careful calculations and theories for human use. The tension on our part became very great. We knew that there was scarcely a chance for anything like complete success, and could not avoid hideous fears at possible grotesque results of partial animation, especially were we apprehensive concerning the mind and impulses of the creature, since in the space following death, some of the more delicate cerebral cells might well have suffered deterioration. I myself still held some curious notions about the traditional soul of a man, and felt an awe at the secrets that might be told by one returning from the dead. I wondered what sights this placid youth might have seen in inaccessible spheres, and what he could relate if fully restored to life. But
I'm pretty sure what he saw was water. Lots of water surrounding him.
Yeah. But my wonder was not overwhelming, since, for the most part, I shared the materialism of my friend. He was calmer than I, as he forced a large quantity of his fluid into a vein of the body's arm, immediately binding...
A very thick fluid, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, immediately binding the incision securely.
Clamp.
Okay. Waiting was gruesome, but West never faltered. Every now and then, he applied his stethoscope to the specimen and bore the negative results
Plonk.
philosophically. After about 3/4 of an hour without the least sign of life, he disappointedly pronounced the solution inadequate, but determined to make the most.
Ah, damn.
But determined to make the most of his opportunity and try one change in the formula before disposing of his ghastly prize.
I'll add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and he should be all good to go.
We had that afternoon dug a grave in the cellar and would have to fill it by dawn. For although we had fixed a lock on the house and we wished to shun even the remotest risk of a ghoulish discovery, beside, the body would not be even approximately fresh the next night. So taking the solitary...
Put it in the fridge then.
Wrap
it up with Glad Wrap.
So taking the solitary acetylene lamp into the adjacent laboratory, we left our silent guest on the slab in the dark and bent every energy to the mixing of a new solution. The weighing and
That's supposed to be bending.
The weighing and measuring supervised by West with an almost fanatical care. The awful event was very sudden and wholly unexpected. I was pouring something from one test tube to another, and West was busy over the alcohol blast lamp.
Boom!
Which had, I was half expecting him to like gulping noises like he was drinking from the alcohol lamp, but okay. Yeah.
Boom.
He took the failure very hard. which had to answer for a Bunsen burner in this gasless edifice. When from the pitch-dark room we had left there burst the most appalling and demonic succession of cries that either of us had ever heard. Nice. Not more unutterable could have been the chaos of hellish sound if the pit itself had opened to release the agony of the damned, for in one inconceivable cacophony was centered all the supernatural terror and unnatural despair of animate nature. Human it could not have been. It is not in man to make such sounds.
What is a man but a miserable pile of secrets?
And without a thought of our late employment or its possible discovery, both West and I leaped to the nearest window like stricken animals. Like stricken animals. They didn't jump out the window, they just jumped to the window because they assumed the sound was coming outside, yeah. Overturning two...
I'm sorry, but all I'm picturing now is Scooby-Doo with Scooby jumping into Shaggy's arms.
Like Zoinks. Yeah. Overturning tubes, lamps, and retorts, and vaulting madly into...
I beg your pardon, you shouldn't be calling people that.
I said retort, not the other one.
Okay.
Retorts and vaulting madly into the starred abyss of the rural night. I think we screamed ourselves... What? We screamed ourselves as we stumbled frantically towards the town. We screamed... Yeah, okay.
Cue the cartoony running sound effects.
Yeah.
Zoing.
Though as we reached the outskirts, we put on a semblance of restraint, just enough to seem like belated revelers staggering home from a debauch.
Snap out of it!
We did not separate, but managed to get to West's room, where we whispered with the gas up until dawn. By then, we had calmed ourselves a little with rational theories and plans for investigation so that we could sleep through the day.
Maybe it was all the meth we took earlier on in the day. Maybe that's what causing it. Yeah, very logical.
Classes being disregarded. But that evening, 2 items in the paper, wholly unrelated, made it again impossible for us to sleep. The old deserted Chapman house had inexplicably burned to an amorphous heap of ashes that we could understand because of the upset lamp. Also, an attempt had been made to disturb a new grave in the potter's field, as if by futile and spadeless clawing at the earth, that we could not understand, for we had patted down the mold very carefully, and for 17 years after that West would look frequently over his shoulder and complain of fancied footsteps behind him. Now he has disappeared. And that's the end of chapter 1. So, how did you feel about the first chapter?
A lot more Scooby-Doo-ish than I was expecting.
Yeah, they're kind of holding off on the terror, but the obvious implication being that the corpse broke out and tried to claw its way back into the grave. Yeah,
I'm going back to bed. Screw you guys. But no, it's.
But that was a good scream. I really like that scream. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope no one else heard it. We'll find out if the police mysteriously show up.
Yeah, okay, but let's now move on to Chapter 2, The Plague-Daemon. I shall never forget that hideous summer 16 years ago when, like a noxious affright... whoa. Sorry, this is... So, I do believe that it is affright, but it's spelled A-F-R-I-T-E. So unless it's like Afrity, like I don't think that's how it's pronounce it. When like a noxious affright from the halls of Iblis typhoid stalked leeringly through Arkham. A noxious affright from the halls of Iblis, from Iblis typhoid. Okay, or Eblis typhoid. Okay.
Hello, I'm Eblis typhoid. How are you?
Yeah, it is by that satanic scourge that most recall the year.
Hail Satan!
For truly terror brooded with bat wings over the piles of coffins in the tombs of Christ Church Cemetery. Yet,
those are very wet-sounding bats.
Yet for me, there is greater horror in that time, a horror known to me, alone now, that Herbert West has disappeared. West and I were doing postgraduate work in summer classes at the medical school of Miskatonic University, and my friend had attained a wide notoriety because of his experiments leading towards the revivification of the dead. That is why that word. Seriously. Like the revival of the dead, resurrection of the dead. Like there's so many better words he could have used there, but revivification. Oh my God,
there's a reason why that. Look, now I can't talk. There's a reason why that clump of words isn't used for a movie title.
Yeah. Also, I probably should have said that, these, I'm referring to these as chapters, but these were actually all separate short stories posted in that, I think in the Weird Tales magazine or some other magazine. So that's why they're kind of recapping a little bit each time at the start. So sorry if it feels like we're kind of repeating the same things. Okay, but let's move on. After the scientific slaughter of the uncounted small animals and freakish work had ostensibly stopped by order of our skeptical dean, Dr. Alan Halsey, though West had continued to perform certain secret tests in his dingy boarding house room, and had one terrible and unforgettable occasion taken a human body from its grave in the potter's field to a deserted farmhouse beyond Meadow Hill. I was with him on that odious occasion, and saw him inject into the still veins the elixir which he thought would to some extent restore life's chemical and physical processes. It had ended horribly in a delirium of fear which we gradually came to attribute to our own overwrought nerves, and West had never afterward been able to shake off a maddening sensation of being haunted and hunted. The body had not been quite fresh enough. It is obvious that to restore normal mental attributes, a body must be very fresh indeed, and a burning of the old house had prevented us from burying the thing. It would have been better if
it's clobbering time.
It would have been better if we could have known it was underground. And very grim, but a tish. Okay. After the experience, West had dropped his researches for some time, but as the zeal of the born scientist slowly returned, he again became importunate with the college faculty. I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I think I understand what they mean by that word.
Is that another Dr. Google word?
Well, we could do a Dr. Google. We haven't done one yet. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. West. I'm Dr. Google. How do you spell it?
Importunate.
Importunate. It means persistent, especially to the point of annoyance.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I kind of figured, but I've never actually seen that word. Interesting. So he's nagging the faculty again about his experiments. Yeah, incessantly. Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's continue then.
Typical Herbert.
Yeah, don't be a herb. Pleading for the use of the dissecting room and of fresh human specimens for the work he regarded as so overwhelmingly important. His pleas, however, were wholly in vain, for the decision of Dr. Halsey was inflexible, and the other professors all endorsed the verdict of their leader. In the radical theory of reanimation, they saw nothing but the immature vagaries of a youthful enthusiast whose slight form, yellow hair, spectacled blue eyes, and soft voice gave no hint of the supernormal, almost diabolical power of the cold brain within. I can see him now as he was then, and I shiver. He grew sterner of face and never elderly. And now Sefton Asylum has had the mishap and West has vanished. Yeah, okay, so it is getting a bit annoying that we have this repetition. That's why I needed to stress that this is a serialized story, and that's why that is. But I have to say, actually, I actually am enjoying reading this a lot more. There's a lot less of the kind of like super difficult sentence structure here than there was in some of the other stories, Lovecraft stories that we've written. So I'm actually finding this much more not pleasurable. What am I saying? I find this an easier read than some of the previous stories. West clashed disagreeably with Dr. Halsey near the end of our last undergraduate term in a wordy dispute that did less credit to him than to the kindly dean in point of courtesy. He felt that he was needlessly and irrationally retarded in a supremely great work.
I beg your pardon?
In this case, it's a verb.
Okay.
Not an adjective. As in to prevent someone, to retard someone. I am retarding you from doing this.
Very rare that we hear that word used correctly.
Yeah. A work which he could, of course, conduct to suit himself in later years, but which he wished to begin while still possessed of the exceptional faculties of the university. That the tradition-bound elders should ignore his singular results on animals and persist in their denial of the possibility of reanimation was inexpressibly disgusting and almost incomprehensible. And incomprehensible to a youth of West's logical temperament. Only greater maturity could help him understand the chronic mental limitations of the professor-doctor type. The product of generations of pathetic puritanism, kindly, conscientious, I think that's how you say it, kindly, conscientious, and sometimes gentle and amiable, yet always narrow, intolerant, custom-ridden, and lacking in perspective. Age has more charity for these incomplete yet high-souled characters, whose worst real vice is timidity, and who are ultimately punished by general ridicule for their intellectual sins like Ptolemaism, Calvinism, anti-Darwinism, anti-Nietzscheism, and every sort of Sabbatarianism and sumptuary legislation. West, young despite his marvelous scientific acquirements, had scant patience with good Dr. Halsey and his erudite colleagues, and nursed the increasing resentment coupled with a desire to prove his theories to these obtuse worthies in some striking and dramatic fashion. Like most youths, he indulged in elaborate daydreams of revenge, triumph, and final magnanimous forgiveness. And then had come the scourge, grinning and lethal, from the nightmare caverns of Tartarus. West and I had graduated about the time of its beginning, but had remained for additional work at the summer school, so that we were in Arkham when it broke with full demonic fury upon the town. They're talking about the typhoid, yeah. Though
Yep.
not as yet licensed physicians, we now had our degrees and were pressed frantically into public service as the numbers of the stricken grew. The situation was almost past management, and deaths ensued too frequent for the local undertakers fully to handle. Burials without embalming were made in rapid succession, and even the Christchurch cemetery receiving tomb. What? And even the Christchurch cemetery receiving tomb was crammed with coffins of the unembalmed dead. This circumstance was not without effect on West, who thought often of the irony of the situation. So many fresh specimens, yet none for his persecuted researches. We were frightfully overworked, and the terrific mental and nervous strain made my friend brood morbidly. But West's gentle enemies were no less harassed with the prostrating duties. Sorry.
Did I just hear that correctly? Gentle enemies.
Yes, gentle enemies.
Oh no! Look out, Robin! It's the cuddler.
Okay. College had all... Wait. College had all but closed, and every doctor of the medical faculty was helping to fight the typhoid plague. Dr. Halsey, in particular...
Oh, yeah!
Dr. Halsey, in particular, had distinguished himself in sacrificing service, applying his extreme skill with wholehearted energy to cases which many others shunned because of danger and apparent hopelessness. Hopelessness. Yes. Before a month was over, the fearless dean had become a popular hero, though he seemed unconscious of his fame as he struggled to keep from collapsing with physical fatigue and nervous exhaustion. West could not withhold admiration for the fortitude of his foe, but because of this was even more determined to prove to him the truth of his amazing doctrines. Taking advantage of the disorganization of both college work and municipal health regulations, he managed to get a recently deceased body smuggled into the university dissecting room one night, and in presence injected a new modification of his solution. The thing actually opened its eyes, but only stared at the ceiling with a look of soul-petrifying horror before collapsing into an inertness from which nothing...
My God! It's a ceiling!
Before collapsing into an inertness from which nothing could rouse it. West said it was not fresh enough. The hot summer air does not favor corpses. That time, we were almost caught before we incinerated the thing, and West doubted the advisability of repeating his daring misuse of the college laboratory. The peak of the epidemic was reached in August. West and I were almost dead, and Dr. Halsey did die on the 14th. The students all attended the hasty funeral on the 15th, and bought an impressive wreath, though the latter was quite
Look at the wreath. How impressive.
Though the latter was quite overshadowed by the tributes sent by wealthy Arkham citizens and by the municipality itself. It was almost a public affair, for the dean had surely been a public benefactor. After the entombment, we were all somewhat depressed, and spent the afternoon at the bar of the commercial house.
Woohoo! Glug, 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 glug.
Yes, such solemn drinking. Where West, though shaken by the death of his chief opponent, chilled the rest of us with references to his notorious theories. Most of the students went home or to various duties, and as the evening advanced, but West persuaded me to aid him in making a night of it.
Hey, you! Want to help me dig up a body?
West's landlady saw us arrive at his room about 2 a.m. with the
Hey, what are you doing?
The landlady had a very gruff voice, with a third man between us, and told her husband that we had all evidently dined and wined rather well. Apparently this acidulous matron was right, For about 3 a.m., the whole house was aroused by cries coming from West's room.
Ooh.
Was aroused by cries coming from West's room. It's funny that you always go to actual crying every time it says cries when...
Ah!
There we go. Where when they broke down the door, they found the two of us unconscious on the blood-stained carpet, beaten, scratched, and mauled, and with the broken remnants of West bottles and instruments around us. Only an open window told us that told what had become of our assailant. And many wondered how he himself had fared after the terrific leap from the second story to the lawn, which he must have made. There were some strange garments in the room, but West, upon regaining consciousness, said they did not belong to the stranger, but were specimens collected for bacteriological analysis in the course of our investigations on the transmission of germ diseases. He ordered them burnt as soon as possible in the capacious fireplace. To the police, we both declared ignorance of our late companion's identity. He was, West nervously said, a congenial stranger whom we had met at some downtown bar of uncertain location. We had all
Hello there, I'm the congenial stranger.
We had all been very jovial.
Hello.
And West and I did not wish to have our pugnacious companion hunted down.
No, leave him alone.
That same night saw the beginning of the second Arkham horror, the horror that, to me, eclipsed the plague itself. Christchurch Cemetery was the scene of a terrible killing, a watchman having been clawed to death in a manner not...
Ow! Ow! That hurts! Killing me!
A watchman having been clawed to death in a manner not only too hideous for description, but raising a doubt as to the human agency of the deed. The victim had been seen alive considerably after midnight. The dawn revealed the unutterable thing. The manager of a circus at the neighboring town of Bolton was questioned, but he swore that no beast had at any time...
Roll up!
But he swore that no beast had at any time escaped from its cage. Those who found the body noted a trail of blood leading to the receiving tomb, where a small pool of red lay on the concrete just outside the gate. A fainter trail led away towards the woods, but it soon gave out. The next night, devils danced on the roofs of Arkham. And unnatural madness howled in the night, in the wind. Okay, yeah. Through the fevered town had crept a curse which some said was greater than the plague, and which some whispered was the embodied demon soul of the plague itself. 8 houses were entered by a nameless thing which strewed red death in its wake. In all, 17 maimed...
I was about to say, this is starting to sound like Edgar Allan Poe now.
In all, Red Death, yeah, I know. In all, 17 maimed and shapeless remnants of bodies were left behind by the voiceless, sadistic monster that crept abroad. A few persons had half seen it in the dark, and said it was white, like a malformed ape or anthropomorphic fiend. It had not left behind quite all that it had attacked, for sometimes it had been hungry. The number it had killed was 14. 3 of the bodies had been in stricken homes and had not been alive. On the 3rd night, frantic bands of searchers, led by the police, captured it in a house on Crane Street near the Miskatonic campus. They had organized...
We got him!
They had organized the quest with care, keeping in touch by means of volunteer telephone stations, and when someone in the college district had reported hearing a scratching at a shuttered window, the net was quickly spread. On account of the general alarm and precautions, there were only 2 more victims, and the capture was effected without major casualties. The thing was finally stopped by a bullet, though not a fatal one, and was rushed to the local hospital amidst universal excitement and loathing.
Dick, you shot me! Oh!
For it had been a man. This much was clear despite the nauseous eyes and the voiceless simianism and the demonic savagery. They dressed...
What a bunch of sexist Well, some women look like that too, you know.
Oh boy. They dressed its wounds and carted it to the asylum at Sefton, where it beat its head against the walls
Ow!
at Patty's cells
Ow!
for
Oh.
16 years, until the recent mishap when it escaped under circumstances that few like to mention. What had most disgusted the searchers of Arkham was the thing they noticed when the monster's face was cleaned. The mocking, unbelievable resemblance to a learned and self-sacrificing martyr who had been entombed but 3 days before, the late Dr. Alan Halsey, public benefactor and dean of the medical school of Miskatonic University. To the vanished Herbert West, and to me, the disgust and horror were supreme. I shudder tonight, as I think of it, shudder even more than I did that morning when West muttered through his bandages, "Damn, it wasn't quite fresh enough." Man, I was hoping more like, "Damn, it wasn't quite fresh enough." Ba-da-da-da-da-da.
Oopsie.
Yeah, could have gone better. Yeah. Okay, I think we can still do chapter 3, but I need to take a little break here. All right, and now for the final chapter of this unnamed horror, we're doing the third chapter or third part of Herbert West the Reanimator, and this chapter is called 6 Shots by Midnight.
I do.
This actually might be my favorite title. Like, most of these other titles are kind of whatever. Okay, the Plague Doctor, that's pretty good. Plague-Daemon is pretty good, but yeah, the 6 Shots by Midnight. Like,
To some people, doctors are demons.
yeah, but this is I kind of like it's kind of funny the evasiveness that the narrator is saying, because, you know, obviously what they did was that they resurrected Dr. Halsey in that previous story. But it is important that he was kept in an asylum and escaped. That whole thing isn't just incidental; it'll actually come back around too. But I love this 6 Shots by Midnight, because it sounds like we were almost like switching genres or something.
Sounds like we're going into a western now.
It is uncommon to fire all 6 shots of a revolver with great suddenness, when one would probably be sufficient. But many things in the life of Herbert West were uncommon. It is, for instance, not often that a young physician leaving college is obliged to conceal the principles which guide his selection of a home and office. Yet that was the case with Herbert West when he and I obtained our degrees at the medical school of Miskatonic University.
Woohoo!
And sought to relieve our poverty by setting up as general practitioners. We took great care to say that we chose our house because it was fairly well isolated and as near as possible to the potter's field. A reticence such as this is seldom without a cause, or indeed was ours, for our requirements were those resulting from life work distinctly unpopular. Outwardly, we were doctors only, but beneath the surface were aims of far greater and more terrible moment, for the essence of Herbert West's existence was a quest amid black and forbidden realms of the unknown, in which he hoped to uncover the secret of life and restore the perpetual animation, the graveyard's cold clay.
That's right. Underneath, we're a bunch of goth kids.
Such a quest demands strange materials, among them fresh human bodies.
Like Velcro.
And in order to keep supplied with these indispensable things, one must live quietly and not far from the place of informal interment. West and I had met in college, and I had been, as I have stated in the 2 previous chapters already, and I had been only one to sympathize with his hideous experiments. Gradually, I had come to be his inseparable assistant, and now that we were out of college and we had to keep together, it was not easy to find a good opening for 2 doctors in company, but finally the influence of the university secured us a practice in Bolton, a factory town near Arkham. The Bolton Worsted Mills are the largest in the Miskatonic Valley, and their polyglot employees are never popular as patients with the local physicians. We chose our house with the greatest care, seizing at last on a rather run-down cottage near the end of Pond Street, 5 numbers from the closest neighbor, and separated from the local potter's field by only a stretch of meadow land, bisected by a narrow neck of rather dense forest which lies to the north. The distance was greater than we wished, but we could get no nearer house without going on the other side of the field, wholly out of the factory district. We were not much displeased, however, since there were no people between us and our sinister source of supplies. That's a nice use of alliteration there. Sinister source of supplies. The Walmart. The walk was a trifle long, but we could haul our silent specimens undisturbed. Our practice was surprisingly large from the very first, large enough to please most young doctors.
That's what she said.
Okay, and large enough to prove a bore and burden to students whose real interest lay elsewhere. The mill hands were of somewhat turbulent inclinations, and besides their many natural needs, their frequent clashes and stabbing affrays gave us plenty to do. Wow, that's a funny way to say it. Stabbing affrays, aka a knife fight. Yeah. Wait, is it still a knife fight if only one of the guys has a knife? No, then it's just a stabbing. Okay, yeah. But what actually absorbed our minds was the secret laboratory we had fitted up in the cellar. The laboratory with the long table under the electric lights, where in the small hours of the morning we often injected West's various solutions into the veins of the things we dragged from the potter's field. West was experimenting madly to find something which would start man's vital motions anew after they had been stopped by the thing we call death, but had encountered the most ghastly obstacles. The solution had to be differently compounded for different types. What would serve for guinea pigs would not serve for human beings, and different human specimens required large modifications. I love that they keep bringing up the guinea pigs still. Like, I know we've established already that there's a lot of recapping because this was serialized, but still, it's still funny they keep reminding us. By the way, is it a bit of a shame that I kind of want there to be like a zombie guinea pig in this story and there's not? Yeah. A ferocious zombie guinea pig. The bodies had to be exceedingly fresh, or the slight decomposition of brain tissue would render perfect reanimation impossible. Indeed, the greatest problem was to get them fresh enough. West had horrible experiences during his secret college researches with with corpses of doubtful vintage. That's a really good way of putting it. Doubtful vintage. Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Like I said, this has probably been my favorite, of the Lovecraft stories to read, because there's really funny, word choices he's using here. In some of the previous stories, the thing that I get is, Lovecraft wants to use, really elevated language at times. And a few times when I re-listened to, our Call of Cthulhu reading, I get the feeling he was, trying a little too hard. But here it actually works. This is
he's having a bit of fun here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The results of partial or imperfect animation were much more hideous than were total failures, and we both held fearsome recollections of such things. Ever since our first demonic session in the deserted farmhouse on Meadow Hill in Arkham, we had felt a brooding menace, and West, though a calm, blonde, blue-eyed scientific automaton in most respects, and I love that he keeps slipping in that, description of Herbert. It keeps getting shorter and shorter each time, or he's found a more efficient way of saying it, but still. Often confessed to a shuddering sensation of stealthy pursuit. He have felt that he was followed, a psychological delusion of shaken nerves enhanced by the undeniably disturbing fact that at least one of our reanimated specimens was still alive, a frightful carnivorous thing in a padded cell at Sefton, sorry. Then there was another, our first, whose exact fate we had never learned. We had fair luck with specimens in Bolton, much better than in Arkham. We had not been settled to a week before we got an accident victim on the very night of burial. Made it open its eyes with an amazingly rational expression before the solution failed. It had lost an arm. If it had been a
oh crap! My arm.
If it had been a perfect body, we might have succeeded better. Between then and the next January, we secured 3 more. 1 total failure, 1 case of a marked muscular motion, and 1 rather shivery thing. It rose of itself and uttered a sound. Then came a period...
Rosebud.
Then came a period when luck was poor. Internments fell off, and those that did occur were of specimens either too diseased or too maimed for use. We kept track of all the deaths and their circumstances with systemic care. One March night, however, we unexpectedly obtained a specimen which did not come from the potter's field. In Bolton, the prevailing spirit of Puritanism had outlawed the sport of boxing, with the usual result. Surreptitious and ill-conducted bouts among the mill workers were common, and occasionally professional talent of low grade was imported. This late winter night, there had been such a match, evidently with disastrous results.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yes,
he's knocked out permanently.
Since 2 timorous Poles had come to us with incoherently whispered entreaties to attend to a very secret and desperate case. We followed them to an abandoned barn where the remnants of a crowd of frightened foreigners were watching a silent black form on the floor. The match had been between Kid O'Brien and Buck Robinson, the Harlem Smoke.
From the 21st century, or 31st century. That was
okay,
Buck Buck Rogers.
The Negro had been knocked out, and a moment's examination showed us that he would permanently remain so. He was a loathsome gorilla-like thing, with abnormally long arms, which I could not help calling 4 legs, and a face that conjured up thoughts of unspeakable...
I'm starting to suspect Howard's a racist again.
And a face that conjured up thoughts of unspeakable Congo secrets and tum-tum poundings under an eerie moon. Yes, Lovecraft was racist. We all know. Moving on. The body must have looked even worse in life. Oh, come on, Howard.
Oh, come on.
Come on. Got it out already. I mean, he said some foul things before, but this is low even for him.
Yeah.
But the world holds many ugly things. Oh yeah, that took the edge off. Fear was upon the whole pitiful crowd, for they did not know what the law would exact of them if the affair were not hushed up, and they were grateful when West, in spite of many involuntary shudders, offered to get rid of the thing quietly, for a purpose I knew too well. There was bright moonlight over the snowless landscape, but we dressed the thing and carried it home between us through the deserted streets and meadows, as we had carried a similar thing one horrible night in Arkham. We approached the house from the field in the rear, took the specimen in the back door, and down the cellar stairs, and prepared it for the usual experiment. Our fear of the police was absurdly great, though we had timed our trip to avoid the solitary patrolman of that section. The result was wearily anticlimactic. Ghastly as our prize appeared, it was wholly unresponsive. To every solution we injected it in its black arm. Solutions prepared from experience with white specimens only. So as the hour grew dangerously near to dawn, as we did We did as we had done with others. Dragged the thing across the meadows to the neck of the woods near the potter's field, and buried it there in the best sort of grave the frozen ground would furnish. The grave was not very deep, but fully as good as that of the previous specimen. The thing which, at least they weren't racists in burial. The thing which had risen of itself and uttered a sound.
Boing.
In the light of our dark lanterns, we carefully covered it with leaves and dead vines, fairly certain that the police would never find it in a forest so dim and dense. The next day, I was increasingly apprehensive about the police, for a patient brought rumors of a suspected fight and death. West had still another source of worry, for he had been called in the afternoon to a case which ended very threateningly. An Italian woman had become hysterical over her missing child, a lad of 5 who had strayed off early in the morning and failed to appear for dinner, and had developed symptoms highly alarming in view of an always weak heart. It was a foolish hysteria, for the boy had often run away before, but Italian peasants are exceedingly superstitious, and this woman seemed as much harassed by omens as by facts. Oh boy, still with the racism, huh? About 7 o'clock in the evening, she had died, and her frantic husband had made a frightful scene in his efforts to kill West, whom he wildly blamed for not saving her life. Friends had held him when he drew a stiletto, but West departed amidst his inhuman shrieks, curses, and oaths of vengeance.
So he's gonna get stabbed with a shoe.
In his latest affliction, the fellow seemed to have forgotten his child, who was still missing as the night advanced. There was some talk of searching the woods, but most of the family's friends were busy with the dead woman and the screaming man. Altogether, the nervous strain upon West must have been tremendous. Thoughts of the police and the mad Italian both weighed heavily. We retired about 11, but I did not sleep well. Bolton had a surprisingly good police force for so small a town, and I could not help fearing the mess which would ensue if the affair of the night before were ever tracked down. It might mean the end of all our local work, and perhaps prison for both West and me. I did not like those rumors of a fight which were floating about. After the clock had struck 3, the moon shone in my eyes.
Dong. Damn, moon, so bright at this time. Ugh.
But I turned over without rising to pull down the shade. Then came the steady rattling at the back door. I lay still and somewhat dazed, but before long heard West's rap on my door.
Yo, what up?
And he was clad in dressing gown and slippers, and had in his hands a revolver and an electric flashlight. From the revolver, I knew that he was thinking more of the crazed Italian than the police. "We'd better both go," he whispered. It wouldn't do not to answer it anyway. Crazy double negatives going on here. Okay. It wouldn't do not to answer it anyway, and it may be a patient. It would be like one of those fools to try the back door.
In your window.
Yeah, okay. So, we both went down the stairs on tiptoe.
Ow! I'm sorry. Ding, ding, ding.
Incidentally, our toes were broken, apparently. With a fear partly justified and partly that which comes only from the soul of the weird small hours, the rattling continued, growing somewhat louder. When we reached the door, I cautiously unbolted it and threw it open. And as the moon streamed revealingly down on the form silhouetted there, West did a peculiar thing. Despite the obvious danger of attracting notice and bringing down on our heads the dreaded police investigation, a thing which after all was mercifully averted by the relative isolation of our cottage, my friend suddenly excitedly and unnecessarily emptied all 6 chambers of his revolver into the nocturnal
Oh,
visitor.
sorry. Boom, 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 boom. That's a very weird sounding. Wait, I'll put some oil in it for boom, 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 boom,
All
boom,
right,
boom.
all right, that was definitely more than 6, but okay. Okay.
You have to reload, but it...
For the visitor was neither Italian nor policeman. Looming hideously against the spectral moon was a gigantic misshapen thing not to be imagined save in nightmares. A glassy-eyed, ink-black apparition nearly on all fours, covered with bits of mold, leaves, and vines, foul with caked blood, and having between its glistening teeth a snow-white, terrible cylindrical object terminating in a tiny hand. And that's the end of part 3 of the Reanimator. All right.
Oh, that's a creepy ending.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had forgotten. I mean, I knew there was a part with the black boxer thing, but I had forgotten about that description of him. Like holy shit. That was almost as bad as Dave Chappelle's like gag sometimes.
So it's weird the way that Howard was describing that character. I was just thinking of like the Looney Tune characters, how they're portrayed. Again, not very nice.
Yeah. But that was like.
And I'm glad that in history we're well beyond that stuff. Or
Yeah.
a good chunk of us are.
Yeah, we recently we had, well, not recently. I mean, previously we had like the Italians, Lovecraft dunking on the Italians, in the cold air. So that with Mrs. Herrera and and everything, and I am beginning to notice like subconsciously some more similarities of things that I because I had forgotten about that Italian woman thingy, but when I wrote my story, the Shadow of Silo, like I definitely channeled a little bit of that as there as well. But I had forgotten about it. I forgot that it was in this story specifically. But that was kind of like the whole point when I was writing that story.
Is it just me, or the death of the Italian woman was a bit of a swerve? Because it sounded to me like they were starting to tease that the child was going to be the next experiment.
No, the child had disappeared. It's kind of funny because the whole thing with the second part, the second story was that the assistant didn't explicitly say, but we know that it was Dr. Halsey. It was weirdly evasive. And here, he was very open about the research. So it's a weird kind of a switch between those narrative points. But I think that was kind of weird that the woman just, up and died, from being so worried about her missing child. Like that was a bit ridiculous. But yeah, like
that's a bit cartoony. Yes, bit Monty Pythonish.
Yeah, or maybe Lovecraft was a bit, being a bit over dramatic there, but like, I guess that was kind of, there's also a bit of like housekeeping. Let's get these pesky secondary characters out of the way, so we don't have to worry about it.
It's sort of like I need to put my hatred towards the Italians so I can focus more on my hatred for the African Americans.
Well, I don't know if it was that, but it's definitely like but yeah, that by far was the most disturbing ending, I will say. Like just the scene of the guy with basically like the child with the resurrected boxer with a child's arm still in his mouth, like it goes a little bit over the top. Like that was kind of the point, like you said, like that it felt like a little bit like Lovecraft was having a little bit of fun with the story, and it is supposed to be like this is not supposed to be that much of like a serious horror story. Like it was supposed to be a bit of a parody of Frankenstein. Is basically what was kind of the prompt originally. And actually, like Lovecraft himself, I think we've said this before, but he didn't actually enjoy writing these kind of long, serialized stories very, very much because he didn't like having to always, especially because this in this case, he kind of leaves like little breadcrumbs in the story about what will eventually happen, which is going to be in chapter 6. They keep bringing up the previous. I mean, like I said, because the story was serialized, that's the reason why they keep recapping. But there's another narrative reason why they keep reminding of the previous failed, experiments. So, any other comments or observations there?
Don't mess with the dead, because they will bite you in the ass.
Yeah, the thing about the Halsey, and that's the thing, because the whole thing is like Halsey was like this kind of like a Giga Chad doctor who was, helping Arkham during the typhoid epidemic. Like that's like the one kind of very thoughtful part of this story. Like like even Howard is like not Howard, sorry, Herbert. Like even Herbert is like humbled by Halsey's thing, but it's like that's the thing. Like Herbert is such an incompetent scientist. Like, no matter how badly things go, he just doesn't like, well, I gotta make it fresher next time. Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to go into the whole details yet, but which parts of these early, like, the first 3 chapters, how are these incorporated in the film? I'm a little bit curious to hear about.
Not very well. Pretty different from the movie itself. The movie takes more place in modern times. The only thing that they've kept is really more of just the experimentation parts, but in experimentation parts and his secret lab, but it takes more place. It does take place in like the college setting, but it also takes place in the 80s as well.
Yeah,
Well, this is clearly a much different time, and a lot more there's a lot more going on in these original stories than the movie, because the movie were quite the movies were quite straightforward.
Yeah, and I would imagine that as well, because it actually takes place over like several years. Like there's been big time gaps between each chapter, so I understood that they probably streamlined that.
Although when you mention the time gaps, the thing that reminds me of when it comes to the movie are the sequels. One of the sequels takes place like 16 years after the original first 2 movies. Okay, and guess what? He's in jail for the 3rd movie.
Okay, interesting. Because I don't think Herbert ever gets in jail. But this much of a spoiler, but the ghouls do come to get him in the 6th chapter eventually. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so all right, but if we have no more further comments, I guess we're about to wrap it up for this Unnamed Horror, and remember to tune in for the next Unnamed Horror when we will complete Herbert West Reanimator, the final 3 chapters. Then, thank you. See you in 16 years for that episode. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.